Have you ever held the door open for someone and when they walked in, they didn't say thank you, like they were entitled to you holding that door open? This happened to me this last weekend, but what was really interesting was right before it happened, I talked to one of my homies, Bash, about when this happens and how like we both naturally just get angry and we'll like if someone does that, we'll like drop the door on them if we can tell they're not going to say thank you. And that just didn't feel right because it's like, are we holding the door open for a thank you? And also like, shouldn't you be the bigger person? And so I thought a lot about this and then it happened to me. And I was able to, I got angry, but I was able to move past it and genuinely not hold anger in that person. Like we were walking into an Urban Outfitters when this happened. And the whole time we're like walking around the store. And at first I was angry and noticed tension. And then I dropped it. And here's how I was able to drop it. Here was the missing piece. It was the concept of everyone is doing the best they can with the resources that they have. Do you agree with that? Here's where I first heard this. I heard this from someone who studied under a Hawaiian healer, a Hawaiian shaman, and it was at a very corporate event, and it was they stole the show. They had this they ended up making their talk about that, which no one expected. It wasn't like what the event was about that concept. And when the person said that and introduced it, there was someone else at the table with me who was like, no, they do not. Some people are not doing the best they can with the resources that they have. And the person that they were kind of like giggling about it, and that really bothered me. And I couldn't understand, I couldn't like respond. I didn't know how to respond to like, I believe that everyone is doing the best they can with the resources that they have. And she actually explained it to me personally later on. And so I understood why. And it was like, how do I answer that person that's like, no, some people are really not. And I think the answer lies in realizing this concept. Life is really hard. Like life is hard. Everyone has to go through the human experience, which is hard, meaning that everyone has to experience death, aging. No one gets around that. And essentially one way to look at life is just looking at life as distractions from this hard life. Now, if we were to hold that concept, people do different types of distractions, right? One really negative distraction is alcohol, but it's easy and a lot of people do it. The reason being is you get the reward when you drink alcohol right away. Like you drink alcohol, you have a great time, and the suffering doesn't come until later when you're hungover the next day. For you to now choose a distraction from life that isn't alcohol, you have to have a lot of resources because you have to choose something like, for example, the piano. There's a piano right there where the reward doesn't come when you're practicing the piano. You got to do this like boring, repetitive, key by key. And the reward comes later on in life. And to choose a distraction that involves suffering off the bat, you need health, you need resources. It's not easy. You need capacity. And to have capacity, you need resources. I personally believe that my biggest privilege is that I was given unconditional love as a child. If you look at people who've never been hugged before, you can just tell they're walking around with a weight on them. And that unconditional love, actually in research, is connected to how resilient someone is. And you need that resiliency to choose some of these harder life paths that pay off in the long run. Now, taking this back to how does this connect to everyone's doing the best they can with the resources that they have, you find out that it's actually living a lifestyle that isn't an instant gratification and that isn't focused on yourself, but is sacrifice. Essentially, sacrifice leads to the most fulfillment. But to do that, you need to be more resilient. And so if someone is not awoken to that, they're in their own world, you hold open the door for them and they walk right through it, think about how sad their life must be. They're doing the best they can with the resources. They're probably just trying to survive. They're doing the best they can, and they don't have the resources to understand why you should be thanking that person, why you should be not focused on yourself, because focusing on yourself is not as a fulfilling life. And there's one more piece you need to understand that, because some people may disagree with that. Hey, if someone wants to do their own thing, how are you going to tell them how to live, right? But here's why I believe not focusing on yourself or living a life of sacrifice is a more fulfilling life. If you start with the concept that you are only as healthy as your ideas are humane, looking at that word humane is essentially living a life that is acknowledging others, making everyone else as healthy, treating them as they want to be treated, bringing everyone else up, right? And so if living a life in sacrifice of others, which means not focusing on yourself but bringing everyone else up, if that is more humane, then you are more healthy. And if you are more healthy, I believe there is a connection to happiness. If you look in psychology, I was a psychology major. I have a college degree in psychology, did a lot of research. And one of my favorite lines of research that came out of that field of psychology was the SPIRE model. Right now, or after this video, I encourage you to YouTube SPIRE happiness and watch the video by Big Thing because they break it down easy. But essentially, what it is to be happy, if you want to be happy, you can't chase happiness directly. You have to chase it indirectly, and you do that by filling up your cup in these 5 areas: spiritually, physically, intellectually, relationally, and emotionally. And when it comes to spiritually, it's not a religious thing. It just means connecting on a purpose bigger than yourself. And that's why I think that to be more happy, you have to have that spiritual piece, which is thinking on something bigger than yourself. And to live in a way bigger than yourself, you have to make that sacrifice. And so at the end of the day, if I see someone who is being a jerk, they're not living for others. They don't see the purpose of bringing others up. And there is so much fulfillment there. And if they're being a jerk, they are likely caught up in their own head, and they must not be happy, and they're probably focused on their self. And although they may be getting more gratification in the short term, that instant gratification, they're not going to be truly happy or fulfilled in the long term. And that ultimately is sad to me. So now when I see it almost as like, that's so sad that they weren't awoken to how fulfilling life can really be and how impactful they can be on others. They're kids. I mean, if someone's a jerk like that, imagine if they're raising kids. How sad that is for the kids. And, I only have this perspective because I had great-grandparents. I have my great-grandma today, very lucky, who showed me the power of unconditional love. And I have other family members who went down the route of just focusing on themselves, that instant gratification. And those family members that played out, it just gets sad. They live by themselves. They're not that involved in the family. They're always drinking. And then I see the fulfillment and the energy that my great-grandma has. She's 92 years old, and that fulfillment gives her purpose for her to still live at 92 years old today. That is a fulfilling purpose. When I see other people, it's just live for themselves. It may be easier, but it's not as fulfilling. And ultimately, to not live that easy path, you have to have a lot of resources. You have to have a lot of love, a lot of awokenness of why it's worth leaving this easy lifestyle and living a life of sacrifice. Why would I go into the fire? Why would I go into the darkness when I'm here in the light? But what you realize is the further you go into the darkness, the more you bring along your brothers and sisters, humanity that is in that darkness. And here's why it's worth it. To change someone's mind, let's just say we were to graph the world if we were to put the world into 2 buckets, and I know it's not this black and white, but let's just say we had to make it this black and white. Evil and good. If you were to put everyone on a spectrum of where they are, what I've learned from my mentor is to change people's mind who was living in this perpetuating negative energy and bring them along. People who are already over on this good side, you can use words and you can convince them, hey, just do this. This YouTube video will convince those people and will bring them to the good side. But if you have someone who's really jaded and has been sucked into that negative life, they need to feel to change. Words won't do anything. They need to feel that change. And that's why I believe that you need more resources to go into that dark side and make more sacrifices and get on that person's level. So for example, when I hold that door open for that guy and he doesn't thank me, rather than getting mad and leaving him in there, I can, give him a smile, ask him how he's doing. That is a direct example. That right there is a direct opportunity of someone I can bring along on the side by making him feel the unconditional love that clearly he doesn't have, to make him realize that he should love me. Here's my little ball of love. We're going to sign off on that. Everyone's doing the best they can with the resources that they have, and I'm out.